Hey y'all, hey, it's your girl Jay. Thanks for tuning in and listening to the Shift podcast. Do you want to start a podcast too? Well, look no further. Go to Anchor app or anchor.fm to get started right now for free. Yes, that's right, for free. And here's the nice thing. You can do it all in one place. Record, edit, send to major distributors like Spotify, Apple, Google, and more. So what are you waiting for? Go start your podcast today and continue listening into The Shift. Thanks. Welcome to The Shift, a podcast here to help you adjust to the new. I'm your host, Jay Camille. If this is your first time watching, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow my Facebook page, and keep up with The Shift on Instagram. This podcast is here to help you get through anything, everything, all things new. Whether it means moving to a new city, starting a new career, getting through a new relationship, or even getting through new tough times such as anxiety and depression. So get ready, get set, and let's shift. See you guys soon. So hi everyone, it is Jay Camille. It has been such a while since I've seen you all since we finished season 2 in February, and now it is May 1st. So welcome back to the Shift podcast, a podcast here to help you adjust to the new. This season, we are talking about shifting out of shock. So I'm going to get a little bit personal throughout this season, but just to kind of preface it, as I've mentioned on my different pages, there were a lot of things that happened last year in terms of the pandemic, job loss, layoffs, and one of those things did affect me. And it really put me into a sense of shock. Like I was frozen. I didn't know what to do for a minute. And that's also part of why I paused the podcast for a little bit, just trying to figure out how to get back on my feet. And once I did, I found different ways. I went to therapy. I sought advice from friends and loved ones, and really just started to push myself. I started getting more active, and those things helped me shift out of shock. And once I did it, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what about everyone else? Because I saw so many people around me that were still stuck and didn't know how to get out of this state. So that brings us to our third season of the Shift podcast, which is Shifting Out of Shock. And it's dedicated to you all as listeners to help you get out of this state too. And even if you're not in this state, to help you to get the tools and resources to encourage someone else who is. Because everyone knows someone that was affected by this pandemic in some shape, way, form, or fashion. Whether it was a job loss, whether it was losing a loved one, there was so much more. Everyone was affected by the pandemic in some way. So we're going to tackle that in this season of The Shift. And now I'm going to bring on our special guest today, Miss Karen Brown Tyson. Karen, welcome to the Shift podcast. Thank you for joining us on today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Jay. It's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. Tell you a little bit about myself. Karen Brown Tyson. I have a career in public relations and corporate communications for the last 28 years. And as you say, you went through a period where you had to shift out of shock. And I did the same thing in 2017. I was laid off from my job. So I really did have to shift. And what happened since then is I started my own business, Constant Communicators, and also I have written 2 books. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, you have written 2 books. Oh my gosh. So that's what I'm excited about, because I always love when I have authors on here. Usually they do giveaways, hint, hint, for some of the listeners tuning in. But Karen, talk to us a little bit about your 2 pieces of work. You have A Time to Refresh and A Time to Reset. And I see one of them in your background there. But yes, please talk to us about what inspired you to write these 2 books.
Well, the first book, Time to Refresh, was inspired by obviously being laid off. But one morning I was coming home from the gym and I was at a light and I thought to myself, I said, Lord, I feel like I'm in a timeout, And he said to me, he said, well, write a book about it. And immediately I came up with this idea of writing a book called Time to Refresh. And it's about what happens when you're on the sidelines. And it's really letting people know that they can spend time with the Lord, focus on God and what He has planned for you. And so I went off in that direction and started writing the book. And after I wrote the first book, I decided that I wanted to make it a series. And so I focused on time to reset because I wanted to help people go beyond that refreshing moment. So, what are you doing now? So, I was in church one night, it was on New Year's Eve, and I was listening to a sermon about time to reset. And I thought to myself, what would that be like if I did a reset of my own life and do an assessment of my own situation? And that's what led to the second book, Time to Reset. And so far, the book came out in January of this year, and
Oh,
so far it's gotten a lot of positive feedback from people about the devotionals. There's a 21-day devotional in each of the books,
yeah.
and so I do get a lot of feedback from people about how the book is helping them during their time of either refreshing or their time of resetting.
That's awesome. So how soon after your job loss did you start writing this book? The first one, The Time to Refresh.
Oh, okay. So in November 2017, I was told I was going to be laid off by December 31st.
Oh, wow.
And so I started writing the book in January 2018 because really when you're going through that period of being laid off, what part of you wants to look for a job? So I was looking for a job. But
Mhm.
the other part of me thought to myself, do I have to wait for someone to give me work to start working? And I thought, no, I
Mm.
don't. I can actually give myself work. And the book was my work. And so I started researching, I started gathering notes. I pulled everything together. And every day, Camille, I would come downstairs and I would write at my kitchen island. Every day, I would focus on this book. And it wasn't until March of that same year, 2018, that I decided to start my own business. But I decided to start writing the book in January 2018.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Especially just because, like, after dealing with something so traumatic and so heavy, you were like, no, this is the work I've been assigned to do, and I'm going to encourage others, like, right after.
Hmm.
Kudos to you, because I was definitely in a sense of shock with what I was going through for like 2 months, if not longer. So that's really amazing. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for even doing that and for sharing your story with us. So if we dive a little bit deeper into your story, one, I also want to point out really quick, I love that both of them are 21-day devotionals, because most people say it takes 21 days to break a habit. And so
Oh,
I love
yeah.
that you're like, giving them 21 days to get out of that mindset of being
Hmm.
in shock or being in depression, anxiety, whatever it was that they experienced when they were sidelined. You give them 21 days to say, hey, okay, let's refresh, let's reset, let's get out of this state. So I just really
Yeah.
wanted to point that out. I love that. And then
Oh,
the
great.
second thing I wanted to ask you, as we dive deeper into your story, can you talk to us about those emotions you felt when you found out that you were going to be laid off? And then, because most people, after they've gone through the experience and now that they're walking and operating in purpose, they're kind of like, oh yeah, I went through that back then. And, but now look where I am. And there's some people who are experiencing that right now. So like, can you talk about
Hmm.
those emotions that you felt? And then how long did you let yourself sit in those? And obviously it doesn't sound like it was that long, but like, how long would you say was like a healthy time that you said, okay, I'm going to sit in these emotions, I'm going to feel it. And then by this time, I'm done with it and we're moving forward. And then after, that time frame, how did you use those emotions to like really transform into encouraging others? So I know that's kind of a loaded question.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's a really good question because Um, I think I write this somewhere. It might be in the second book or maybe the first book. But I was called to a meeting on a Wednesday, and I was told that I was being laid off. I had no idea. I did not expect that I was getting laid off. I thought I was getting a new assignment or more work or, something like that. So it took about 25 minutes for them to just talk straight through and tell me that I was getting laid off.
Mm.
And so the call ended, like after 43 minutes or so. And when I hung up the phone, Jay, I said right then, I said, you know what? I've been laid off before, and God has carried me every single time I've been laid off. I said, in this moment right now, I choose to trust the Lord. I'm not going to cry about it. I'm not going to fall out about it. In 15 minutes, I'm going to the hairdresser and I'm going to get my hair done. And I'm like, I don't have the capacity to even have a fit about it. Now, I do understand, I am sympathetic to people because, when you get laid off and you don't expect it, it does, take you to a place and you start thinking all kinds of things. Immediately, I just told myself, I'm not going through that. I don't deserve to take myself through that. I don't want to go through that. So in this conversation, they said to me, Karen, we know that this might be a shock to you. We're going to let you take the rest of the week off or however long you need in order to deal with this news. And you know what I said? I said, thank you so much. I think I will. And, I have like a really, strong work ethic. I get up really early. I get up between 3:30 and 4, and
Yeah.
I start working and doing all kinds of things. But when they said, you could take the time that you need, I said, I'm going to take the time that I need. And I'm just going to chill out. I'm just going to think about what God wants me to do. I'm going to pray. I'm just going to spend some time with myself. And I did that. And it was great. Actually, those 2 days, were actually great. And then I went back to work, and I was dealing with people who were sad that I was getting laid off. Some people were saying, are you upset? Are you mad? I'd be
Right.
mad if I were you. And
I
I said,
would.
no. I said, I'm not going to be mad. I cannot. I can't get sad. I can't get mad. I am going to be happy about the opportunity that's waiting for me on the other side of this layoff.
Mm.
And so I decided then, Jay, that I wasn't going to go into the office anymore, um, because it was kind of hard. It's hard, on people, because I wanted to stay focused on, what God was calling me to do. I did go in the last 2 days of that month of November just to show them the things that I had been working on and to give them all the files they needed, the passwords they needed. I wished them well. I told them I wanted them to be successful in the future. I remember walking out the door on my last day, the sun was shining, and I said, God, all I see is new future for me because that's what you have planned for me. And I drove away in peace. and
Wow.
so and so I from that moment, Jay, I wanted to be free. I didn't want to be held down by any sadness or anything that somebody else was doing. I didn't lose my job.
Mhm.
They got rid of my job. And so I didn't want to take it on as a burden, like I lost something or that I did something or that I was being rejected. I said no. And it was the best decision that I ever made to just say no in that moment. I'm not going to go there. And so I was blessed in terms of being able to have my family to be able to talk to.
Yeah.
Also, usually during that time, you think about all the bills that you have and
Right.
responsibilities that you have. Since I had already in my career been laid off 2 other times, I decided to live. Um, it wasn't entirely debt free, but it was very minimal debt that, just could be paid off. So I didn't want to be worried about debt. And so I was able just to go on and start to focus immediately on what God had for me. And that's why I was able to start writing the book in January.
Wow, you are better than me. And because I don't know, I think I would have felt like those emotions and feelings of
Hmm.
anger and rage and sadness and the ups and downs. And I do feel
Hmm.
like, with what I experienced, even though I wasn't laid off because it happened at the company I work with, I felt that. Because I
Yes.
felt it for those that I worked with on my team. And I was like, oh my gosh, like they're being cut. I saw people walk out with boxes and crying.
Hmm.
So for you to just walk away in peace, that's how you know you were operating in a complete different other strength. Like that's definitely the strength of God. That's
It
amazing.
is.
Wow. Yeah.
And I will tell you, Jay, that I had been laid off two other times. So the first time I got laid off, I was in my late 20s,
Hmm.
and it didn't go well, Jay. I was a basket case. I had just gotten married. I got laid off, and girl, I'm telling you, I all I wanted was a job. And
Yeah.
I would look for a job. I would send out resumes. I lived at Kinko's because at Kinko's they have computers and
Yeah.
copiers and all these things. I lived at Kinko's, and I was just a basket case. And I ended up having to go talk to my pastor that I had then,
Mhm.
about all of this. And that's when he started to talk to me about God's will,
Well,
and
that's
actually starting to surrender to God's will and not me trying to always control everything.
good.
And that's when I started to learn my lesson. I said I never want to be in that state again. That Karen was not a good Karen at that time. And so so I had to learn over time to surrender to God's plan, and to, like you said, yes, it's very easy to get in your emotions in terms of, if you're losing a job or if you see people losing a job. And so this third time, I did not want to do that. And I promised the Lord that not only would I trust him, but that I would help other people and try to inspire other people when they're in that situation.
Wow, that's good. And it definitely does take a lot of trust. I remember God speaking to me leading up to my meeting on the layoff meeting, and he said to me, he was like, "Who do you trust? Who do you put your trust in?" And in that moment, I'm like, "Well, God, obviously I trust you." But at the same time, the way my body was trembling and I was nervous inside, I wasn't really operating as though I trusted him. I was just saying it, but
Hmm.
acting it. And I
Hmm.
remember he took me to the scripture in Deuteronomy 31 where it says that he goes with you and goes before you.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I remembering that scripture, God was like, I've already been in the room. I've already looked and I've already sought out. And, being that I'm God and I know what's best for you, then
Yes.
I need you to trust me. Whether it goes good or
Yes.
bad, I need you to trust that my word says my plans for you are to prosper and not fail. So that's
Yes.
really good that you talked about trust, because that's what it takes going into these meetings. And then
Hmm.
even moving forward, just trusting. So how did you know
Yeah.
your assignment was to write?
Well, I had actually for years, when I was in undergraduate school, I was an English major. So in my mind, I love books. I love reading. I remember on the last day, I was packing up my belongings in the I was sharing a townhouse with some roommates, and I graduated and I was packing up my boxes. And I remember putting my books in the box thinking, or yeah, saying to myself, one day I'm going to write one of these. And so I had tried to write books before. I had tried to just sit down and just start writing. I thought I was going to write um, like a mystery or something like that. I thought that would be my first book. And so it wasn't until I was sitting at the light after I left the gym when the Lord told me, why don't you write about it? Why don't you show people that, yes, getting laid off can be challenging, but if they spend time with me, if they trust me, I'll take them to places that they've never seen before, and I'll show them my plan for their life is better than anything that they ever had planned for themselves. And
Mm.
I said, and I remember coming home and just going to the kitchen and just starting to do like an outline. And I would say to Camille, since I wasn't very successful the other times in writing my book, I had to learn how to have a routine.
Mhm.
I had to learn how to manage my writing process. I had to learn all of those things while I was writing. But it was a great something for me to focus on. I didn't have any time to focus on any, sadness or any depression or, anything like that. I was focused on this book and how I was going to get the stories and the words out of my head onto paper. And that's what I focused on.
Wow, that's awesome. So would that be how you would think that like you sustain during this process? Because I know a lot of listeners out here going through the pandemic or just went through it, and
Mhm.
how would you suggest that they sustain mentally, physically, emotionally? Like, what did you do to sustain? It sounds like you switched your working task from what was your job to now writing on the book. But what were
Mhm.
some other things you did around that?
I did. I mean, I did a lot of talking to friends and family. My husband is my best friend, so we would talk, all the time. We talk, a lot actually, and so I was able to have that. And I do tell people, I do journaling as well, and so I do tell people, write down how you feel. Your journal is your private place where you can actually, put your thoughts out there. And
Mhm.
so I would say, get a journal and actually just start writing about how you feel. If you're sad, write that you're sad. If you're mad, write that you're mad. If you have questions for God, ask questions of God. Ask him, what does he want you to do, during this time? And so I was able to let all of that out, and I had those outlets of talking to people and writing in my journal and also praying. And so I try to encourage people to do that as well, just because I do understand that getting laid off is not the best thing. It's a hard thing, especially for a lot of people to go through. So I'm
Yeah.
very sensitive to that. But I do say, don't try to hold it all in. Just try to get that out. And also, I do encourage people to try to find things that they love, things that they like, things that they want to explore more in this new world that God is carving out for them, because they may find the path to the place where He's trying to take them.
That's really good. No, that's really good. I appreciate you sharing that. And honestly, I did find as well journaling was something that helped me during quarantine because
Hmm.
you're sitting at home, trapped in the house, and most
Hmm.
people are watching Netflix and the news,
Yeah.
and everything that's happening. But when there was a lot of like social injustice going on, I just couldn't take it
Hmm.
anymore. I was like, I need to turn
Hmm.
everything off. I had to turn my phone off, turn the TV off. And I just got back to like writing stuff down, writing out how I felt, writing out my prayers, writing articles, because, I like to do that as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is definitely a great one to do. And if writing isn't your
Hmm.
thing, my sister, for her, and I can share because I know that she's watching and she doesn't care, but she enjoys painting. um,
Yeah, yeah,
so something that's like creative and positive and helps you get it
yes,
out of your system. When I was younger, I used
yes.
to play piano, so that's something as well. Like for me, that would just help me
Mhm,
release it. But I really
absolutely.
enjoy that you stated that because I think some people don't know how to release and especially how to do that in a positive
Yeah,
way. And of course,
Yeah.
I'm a supporter of like therapy. So definitely I would say therapy
Hmm.
is
I
a
am
great place
too.
to start and
I
a
am
great place
too.
to try. But, even if you can't afford that, or if it's not something you
Hmm.
want to open your mind to try just yet, try something that you enjoy that's positive and creative. So play
Yes.
that instrument, write a journal or in your diary every
Hmm.
day, paint something. A lot of people, it's coloring with
Yes.
crayons, like whatever it is to get your mind off of it and to help you release.
Hmm.
I think that's what a lot of people in this world right now need to do and need to hear. So thanks.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I like how you touched a little bit on the news. And as a public relations and a communications professional,
Mhm.
obviously I depend on the news to help my clients, get their stories out and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like you, I did go through days where I would go get the news that I needed. So I would start like at 4 o'clock in the morning. I like to watch ABC News at 4 o'clock in the morning. And when I got that news, that was the amount of news that I needed to get through the day. And
Mm,
then I would decide if I needed a 6:30 p.m. world news,
mhm.
just so that I could keep up with, like you said, there was social injustice going on. There were, other things that were going on. So just so that I would have the facts of what was going on, I
Mhm.
would pick the times that I would watch the news. And then, like you said, I would turn the news off and then I would go and do something else that didn't take me through, every level of the news throughout the entire day. So I do try to encourage people to, step away at different times of the day, just so that they can say, like you said, your sister paints. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because that's just a way for you to, release. And if you don't paint, I've even done some coloring,
Yeah.
some adult coloring.
That's just as fun.
and, and so just something where you can just release, be creative. Even if there's other things that you love, like making music or playing music or something like that, just do something creative.
And I love that you honed in on time, because to me that goes back to the books that you wrote. It's like it's a time to reset, it's a time to refresh. And oftentimes
Hmm.
we don't set aside that time to pour into ourselves. We set aside the
Hmm.
time to hear the noise, but not the time to be quiet and be still. And so, yeah, that's so on target with everything that you share out, is really switching how much time you're allowing what I call toxicity to get in, and
Yes.
what you're going to change out and allow positivity to come in instead.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
that brings me to our next question. So fast forwarding to now, you were in corporate America for 25 years. Am I right? I think it was more. um, How has it been since accepting this new shift and this new assignment? Because I mean, I feel like just listening to you, it's night and day careers. How has it been making that
Hmm.
shift?
Actually, the shift has been fine. So what I did, Jay, is I immediately told myself, you don't work in corporate America anymore.
Mhm.
You work in your own home office, in your own environment. You call the shots, you make the rules, you set the culture. So let go of all of that you went through in corporate America, all the sort of rigor, and things that you went through. Set your own pace and set your own schedule. And so I have been blessed in terms of being able to find clients, actually work with clients. I do like to get up early, as I said, and I do like to have devotional time. I like to have workout time. I like to have writing time.
Yeah.
And then I like to dedicate time to my client assignments that I have, and getting those done. And I do like to, since the pandemic and everybody was home. So my husband and my son were home. I did stop to make lunch or get lunch so that we would have lunch, as a family. And so I really just tried to do a mindset shift
Mm.
from the corporate environment to my own environment that I was creating for myself. And I do have to tell you, Jay, that when I wake up in the morning, I do tell God, I am so blessed and so grateful that I have this time that I've been spending, at home and working for myself. And that it's been able, to be carved out in the way that, he had planned for me. And it's been working out really well.
And that's amazing. I love that. Yeah, that's amazing. I think it's nice when you're talking about the part where you're like, I set my own culture, my own time, my own this. Like, that must be amazing. It probably feels like the weight is off, like there's a freedom. And speaking of
Mhm.
freedom, because I know you and we had a one-on-one interview before we even had like this podcast discussion. And you talked to me about the freedom that you experienced as you were undergoing this shift. And that was so like astonishing to me, because I'm like, how can you feel free when, I don't know, I would feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders when you're like, I just lost my job. Because I don't know. I think about those that I know that experience this, and they go home and they're like, well, how am I going to pay for my bills? How am I going to deal with this?
Mhm.
And, I know a lot of people got the stimulus check, but even still after that and after unemployment,
Mhm.
and, you just start thinking this, and all these weights. And instead you were kind of just like, I'm free. I'm done. And how can you expound upon that freedom? Like, where did that come from? Yeah.
Right before I got, what happened? I think it was when I had gotten I had gotten the news that I was getting laid off. And it might have even been like in that month of November. But I was, at home, and I was folding clothes, and I heard this message, and it resonated with me immediately. And I think, Jay, it freed me before I was even, out of the office, permanently. But I heard this message that said, um, God is my source. My
Mm,
job was a resource.
mm,
Because God is my source, He's going to give me everything I need to make it. And so as I was folding the clothes, I said, God, you know that I love to work. I said, you know who I am. I said, you know that I have bills to pay. And because you know who I am, you know I love to work, you know I have bills to pay. I said, then you know that I need a job. And I trust that you're going to provide it for me. And you're going to tell me what it is. And I'm not going to spend a day worried about how it's all going to work out, because I'm going to trust you that it's going to work out. And so I was able to just mentally be freed in that moment and see God as my source and my job as a resource. And since then, the Lord has been able to provide. He sent other resources,
yeah.
for us to be able to, have the money that we need to, pay for the electric bill or the cable bill or whatever,
Yeah.
just those day-to-day expenses, that you have, and not have to sit around and worry about, how things are going to go. So I was able to just let that go by seeing God for who He truly is, which
Mm-hmm.
is a source.
That's good. I really love that you keep honing in that you like shifted your mind, because I think that's the
Mhm.
biggest thing, is because we
Mhm.
always focus our mind on everything else that's happening externally when we don't shift our mind to where it needs to be internally. And it sounds like
Yes.
you became a master at that, because then internally you were able to say, okay, well, God, now that I've shifted my focus to you and knowing that you're the source and you're going to provide, what do you want me to do? And you were able to receive your assignment and everything. Whereas I know some people that aren't even there yet because they're still focused on the external rather than the internal. So that's amazing that you were able to just shift your mind to do that. And I 100% agree with you that he is the source. And the thing is, if we stop and listen, instead of listening to the noise and listening to his voice, his Holy Spirit will guide us on how to access that source. And which is so wild to me, but it's so true. And how I know 100% what you're saying is true is because last year when he told me to start a podcast, I was like, this is not my thing. Speaking is not my flow. Everyone can tell you who knows me, like inside, I'm an introvert. So I was like, no, let me fix my antenna. You know, Holy Spirit, I think we're off somewhere. Run that by me again. And he's like, yeah, start a podcast. And so I'm like, okay, I don't even know how to do this. I don't know where to start. I don't know the puzzle pieces. And it was like, as I switched my mindset to say, you know what, I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to listen. I started writing episode titles and outlines, and I didn't even have the equipment yet to do a podcast. But I was walking in obedience. And as I did it, within a week, he started connecting the resources. I had a friend who was like, hey, and one of my good friends, and I told her, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to start a podcast. I don't know how, but I think I'm going to. And she had told me, she was like, oh, well, I just connected with the podcaster last week. Let me connect you with her. And she kind of became like my mentor who shared with me all these resources. I had another friend who had previously tried to start a podcast and took a pause from it. They sent me a checklist of what to do. Another friend who did media and journalism, like all of it came together within a week. But all it took, like you said, was shifting my mind, shifting to trust, and really just believing that the source was going to provide.
Yes, and that's so awesome because you started the podcast, you're able to share your experiences with other people, help to inspire other people. And so, like you said, you're walking in obedience. So it's beautiful. I'm so glad that you started your podcast. And when you told me that you're an introvert, I'm an introvert, but I found out that when we're able to do what we're able to do, we're also called altaverts because we're able to alter between being an introvert and being an extrovert because we need to get our message across or actually extend our voice. And so you live in two worlds. It's okay that you're an introvert.
No, that's great. And you definitely just taught me something new. So now I'm an extrovert today. After this, I'm going back into my introvert mode. But for this moment, yes. Okay, so before we wrap up our podcast, I'm going to allow for a short moment from our sponsor. Today's episode of The Shift is sponsored by the Ultimate Faith Store. This store carries faith-based apparel and accessories for men, women, and children. Their foundation scripture is Matthew 17:20, which reads, "Faith can move mountains." Up to 15% of all purchases are donated to charities, small communities, and people in need around the world. To purchase an item from the Ultimate Faith Store, please use the link attached to this episode and the code JCamille for 10% off. Now, back to you, Jay. Okay, so Karen, that brings us to our final question of the episode. And I'm really sad that it's our final question because you have just been pouring and encouraging like so much. And I really feel like there are a lot of listeners that are being encouraged by your message. And I really hope that they tune in and purchase your book as well because it's super inspiring. But what 3 tips or pieces of advice would you give to a listener who has been sidelined, they just experienced a layoff or been fired? What 3 tips or pieces of advice would you give to them?
The first tip I would say is definitely the journaling in terms of writing down your feelings as to how you're actually feeling about what you're going through. The second thing that I would tell people is also write down what you want your future to look like. If you want a new job, what kind of job would that be?
Mhm.
Would it be in an office? Would it be working at home? What kind of job do you want if that's what you desire? The third tip I would tell people is if there is something that you're passionate about, that you've always dreamed about, start listing out your dreams. And as you list out your dreams, ask God to direct your steps in terms of not only the next job that you take that He wants you to have, but also which dream He wants you to follow. And
Mm,
ask Him to help you and lead you and order your steps so that you reach the dream that aligns with the plan that He has for you. And those are my three tips.
oh my gosh, those are so good. Like, and even I feel like I'm gonna apply a lot of those for myself because what I really gathered out of what your three tips were was to shift forward, not backwards.
Mhm.
Most people they shift, well, they don't shift, they just stay stuck in that sense of
Mhm.
shock, looking at
Mhm.
their past, looking at, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, look at how much time I just gave to this company that's been wasted
Mhm.
all these years. Look at what I lost. And that's what they focus on, whether it's that job, that loved one, whatever it is of the past, that's where people stay stuck. And it sounds like what has helped you and will help them is to shift forward, to
Yes.
shift their mind to get to the future, to get out of it. So,
Yes. Yes, yes, exactly. I do believe in shifting forward, moving forward, and I don't think that people should spend any time thinking, "Oh, I've spent all this time at this company and it's been wasted." No. That was a part of God's plan as well. He's taking you someplace else now. And so now all we have to do is embrace the journey and go on the journey that He wants us to go on. If you were laid off, you were at that company for as long as God wanted you to be there. He's
mm,
lifting you now, He's taking you to a new place. Tell the people that you worked with thank you, but you have to go on your way now because the Lord is directing and ordering your steps to your next destination.
that's good. Karen, something you said earlier, you said I had to realize it wasn't a job loss. Like you never called
Mhm.
it a loss. You were like, this
Mhm.
is an opportunity for what's prepared for me on the next side. Like, that's so amazing that you could shift your mind to that, to not stay stuck. So thank you all again for listening to the Shift podcast. Thank you, Karen, again for joining us today.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Jay, for having me.
You are welcome. I'm Jay Camille. Be sure to follow us on social media. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you all next time.